Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. I welcome you all on this LinkedIn Live session, which is also going live on Facebook and YouTube. So, whether you are watching it live or you watch it later on as a recording, feel free to leave us your feedback. And I welcome you all in this session today. Happy Monday, by the way. And on this Monday today, we are going to talk about a very interesting topic because this is something which is not many people feel comfortable doing, and this is something that a lot of people feel shy about as well. But this is absolutely important when it comes down to building your brand and building and elevating your own business. And we are talking about networking today. And with me, I have a very special guest, a very good friend, and he has been on the path of some very unique networking tips and tricks that he has been doing for the last few years actually. So I thought to have Nick Bendel with us today, who will be sharing some of his experiences around networking. Hi Nick, how are you?
I'm very well, Adeel. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine, Nick. And for all our audience, Nick is a very good professional writer. But in addition to being a professional writer, he is also a very good networker. And I would just like to go straight in with Nick over here. Nick, what is networking actually for our viewers?
Well, I would say networking is the process of building and nurturing relationships. Sometimes people hear networking and they think it's sleazy and you've got to go around trying to sell things to people. You don't have to do any of that. It's just building and nurturing relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And I would actually go back and share with the viewers how Nick and I actually met. We met uh, more than 6 months ago, and it was through that journey that Nick started a few years ago. And he'll be talking more about that journey today because I want all the viewers to hear about it. It's a very interesting concept that he used, and he used that concept to build his own network. And we know how important networks are in your own businesses, in your own personal development. So, Nick, walk me through it before I start spilling the beans over here.
Well, in August 2019, I started a project to have lunch with 500 strangers. And so far,
500
I've met,
strangers. Wow.
yes, 500. So far, Adeel, I've met 368 people, and you were number 339.
Wow, that's a unique idea for everyone, isn't it?
It's a very good idea. And like all my best ideas, I stole it off someone else. I stole this off a woman in Melbourne named Kaylee Chu, who had 100 lunches with strangers in 2018.
Beautiful. And I think Katie was the first one to have a lunch with you, if I correctly recall it.
Yes, you're correct. So I read Kaylee's wonderful book in which she explains her 100 lunches, and that inspired me. And so I contacted her and I said, I loved your book. I'm going to steal your idea. Would you be my first lunch? And she said, yes. So I'm in Sydney and I flew from Sydney to Melbourne just to have lunch with her. That was a fantastic day.
Wow. And for the sake of our viewers, what is lunch has to do with networking? I mean, why are you picking up a lunch for a networking? I mean, lunch is mostly to fill your belly and stuff like that. What has networking to do with lunches?
Well, the reason I like to combine the two, Adeel, is if you have a one-on-one lunch, it gives you the chance to get to know the real person for an extended period of time. If you go to a networking event, which can be great, there might be 100 other people in the room, and so it's not as intimate. And if you do a one-on-one coffee, that can also be good, but a coffee tends to be a shorter, more superficial thing, whereas if you organize a one-on-one lunch with someone, that sends the message to both parties. We're going to be here for an extended period of time. We're probably going to get personal, and it's just a much better way to get to know someone.
It is. It definitely is, and I felt that as well. And I remember the lunch that we had, Nick. We had some very interesting conversations, and we were strangers back then. Well, not anymore, but we were real strangers at the time, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Before that lunch, we didn't know each other, but we just had a really nice chat and we got to know each other. And I think that format meant that there was some intimacy that wouldn't have been there if we'd met at a networking event. I think both of us shared things that we wouldn't have shared had it been a different setting.
Exactly. And that makes me to think you thought of going on this venture of having 500 lunches with 500 different strangers. So, how do you pick those strangers? Where do you get them from? Do you do cold calling or stuff?
I have done a little bit of that. To uh, I'm trying to meet a really diverse cross section of people. I don't want to meet the same person 500 times. I want to meet 500 different people. So different professions, different backgrounds, different ages, different interests. And in terms of where I find these people, generally it's over LinkedIn. I have cold called a few people. I remember I had lunch with a hostage negotiator and I found his phone number via a Google search and I cold called him. And I was actually quite nervous. I thought he was going to tell me to get stuffed, but he said, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea." And we had lunch and it was a wonderful lunch.
Wow, wow. That sounds very interesting. What kind of people you have met over these lunches? Like what different professions and backgrounds? Do you want to share some?
Well, I mentioned a hostage negotiator. I've met a prison governor, a policeman, a private investigator, a magician, a principal. I've met business owners. I've met an athlete. I've met an artist. I've met a QC, a lawyer. I've met a clown doctor. I've met people from so many different walks of life, which is what I find fascinating because it means, as I said, I'm not meeting the same person 500 times. I'm meeting lots of different people. And when you meet people you wouldn't normally meet, you have conversations you wouldn't normally have. And therefore, you learn things you wouldn't normally learn.
Yeah, yeah. And just that makes me curious. I mean, I remember what we talked about when we met, but what do you usually talk about with these people? Because they're all from different backgrounds. As you said, they can be lawyers, they can be property people, doctors, magicians, governors, prisoners. What are you talking to them about? Is it a set agenda that you go through?
There's no set agenda. The conversation can go wherever we want it to go. Because I'm meeting all these different people, I'm often really interested in that specific person because there's usually a reason why I wanted to meet that specific person. It might be because they have a particular profession that interests me, or they're doing a particular project that interests me, or they've got a particular background that interests me. So often I'll ask lots of questions related to that just because I find it really interesting. So that the conversation often goes along those paths. And
Yep.
almost everyone wants to know why on earth I'm having lunch with 500 strangers. So we tend to talk about that as well. And then once we've covered those things, they do a very good job of breaking the ice. And then the conversation just goes in all different directions.
That was actually one of my questions I wanted to ask you today. That how do you break the ice with all these different people? You kind of answered that, but just if you want to elaborate a bit more on that, you are meeting a stranger for the first time. You're sitting across with them on a table, having a lunch. You don't know them; they don't know you. How do you start breaking that ice?
Well, it almost always happens just through curiosity and through questions. Either me asking them questions because I'm curious about something, or them asking me questions because I'm curious, because they're curious. And then before you know it, we've got this conversation going back and forth. And it's a very natural conversation because either I'm curious about them or they're curious about me. And it's just a very natural exchange. And that makes both of us feel comfortable.
I remember how we started. I mean, I was initially thinking, oh, I'm meeting this guy. He's having lunches with strangers. I don't know why he's doing that, but I kind of knew that by the end of our chat when we met. It was a good place where we met in the CBD in Sydney. But coming back to the point, I mean, you started on this quest in August 2019. That is more than 4 years ago. And I think you carried it through COVID as well, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. In Sydney, we had two lockdowns. The first lockdown in 2020, I had video lunches, which were good, but they weren't as good as the real thing. And then in 2021, when we had another lockdown, I decided not to do video lunches. So I did do my lunches for the first lockdown, but not the second lockdown.
Okay, okay. And just for the benefit of our viewers, how those lunches and meeting all those different strangers from different professional backgrounds, how do you think that has helped you in your journey in the last 4 years, be it personal or professional?
A few different ways. I am not a naturally social person. I call myself an antisocial introvert. My idea of a good time is staying at home on my own with a good book. That's my idea of fun. So it's really improved my social skills, and it's made me feel much more comfortable in social situations. Previously, I was already comfortable one on one, but if I had to go to a group setting where I didn't know anyone, that made me feel very uncomfortable. Now I'm perfectly fine in that situation. So it's really helped my social skills. It's also strengthened my mindset, because when you're around a lot of really high quality people who I'm lucky enough to meet, they rub off on me, and they influence me. And also, the nature of doing something like this, it forces you to be proactive. And so I've become more proactive. I'm more likely to, I guess, take control of my life, which I think is important. I'm now very much the driver rather than the passenger, which I think is a better way to live your life. And
Yep.
another way it's benefited me, Adil, is I've built an incredible network, which I'm grateful for. And it means that if I have questions about different things, I can call these different people in my network. Or if one person says, oh, I really want to meet this type of person, I can say, well, funny, you should mention that. I know that type of person. Let me introduce you. And I really like doing that as well.
Exactly. I think you touched upon a lot of different factors over there. The most important being bit having your own network, and network takes time. I mean, you have been doing it for more than 4 years, 4.5 years now, and you still have few more lunches to go to make that 500 mark. But the important thing is that consistency has actually allowed you to evolve and grow that network over time. And now you're feeling much more confident about your network than probably at the time when you started off, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the point you make about how it takes time. This is not some sort of magical thing that you just put in a little bit of work and it just magically happens. It's kind of like getting fit. You can't go to the gym once and suddenly you're fit. And then once you do become fit, you need to keep exercising. And
Yep.
it's the same with networking. It's a long-term process to build a good network. And then you have to keep working on the network. You have to keep building the network, and you have to keep working on yourself, and being the sort of person who others want to associate with. So it's very much a long-term process, and it's an ongoing process.
It is. It is. And you're completely right. It is an ongoing process. And once you build a muscle in the gym, you have to
Mm.
maintain it. And that also takes an effort. So you can't just have, oh, I have a network now and I can sit back and relax. No, you have to keep nurturing them. And that is where it helps you not just getting more clients through them, but also helps you getting them connected to other people of within your network. And that is how you build that trust with them with time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very useful from a business perspective. I'd also say, though, that it's very useful from a life perspective. I've had a few conversations recently, and read some things recently about an increasing amount of loneliness that's happening in our society, especially among men. And if you can go out there and build a network and build relationships, and have a large number of friends, I think it leads to a richer, happier, and more fulfilling life.
It does, it does. And with all those gadgets around us and all the high speed internet and everything, I think it's worth it to have that human to human connection going, because I think we are missing that. And we kind of realized it as a society, but I don't think we realize it to the point where we start taking some serious action collectively. And I think what you are doing is conveying a very good message to everyone, because people should be looking to have more of human to human connection and interaction, because that's what the society is really craving for, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we get more connected technologically, we're getting less connected socially.
Yes, and that is having its effects as well. Coming back to your lunches, so one question I always had in my mind, I thought I'll ask you today. Sorry for putting it across to you without any prep, but who pays for the lunches?
I get asked this so much. We generally split the bill. I know when we had lunch a deal, we split the bill. That
Yep.
happens the vast majority of the time. Sometimes someone is kind enough to offer to pay for me, but generally we split the bill.
That's good. That's a nice way of doing it so that you see them again as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
No, beautiful. That's great. So, I think you've shared quite a lot, and I really enjoyed having this chat with you today. But I would also want you to share some tips or some networking hot tips with the people who are watching this or will be watching this as a recording. How do people go out and start building their network? How do people have a confident network behind them, just like yourself? Do they also have to start having lunches with strangers? Or do they need to be doing something different, something more simpler maybe? What are your tips?
I'll give a few quick tips, Adeel. So the first tip I'm going to give, I've stolen this off someone else. I can't remember who, but her advice was you should not only make the first move, but make the second move, because a lot of people feel nervous, and if you can go up to them and make the first move, they will be really grateful, but often they won't respond the first time because they're not sure how to react. So if you make the second move, that is often the way to go. So if you're at an event and you just walk up to a stranger and start talking, they'll probably be very grateful. Or if you want to contact them over LinkedIn, they'll probably be grateful. And second tip I'd mention is you're not the only one, and I'm not speaking to you personally, Adeel, just a general you. You're not the only one who feels nervous about this sort of thing. I know it feels like it's just you and everyone else has got their stuff together, but most people also feel very nervous and uncomfortable with this. And
Yep.
so once you know that, it actually gives you more confidence to approach people because you know that they're actually going to really welcome the approach. A third thing I'd mention is when you do meet someone, give them the opportunity to talk about whatever they want to talk about, because that's going to make them feel comfortable and it's going to make them feel valued and it's going to help you build the ice more quickly.
Yep.
And the fourth thing I'd mention is aim to do more listening than talking. The conversation will probably flow more smoothly. And just a final thing, just be genuinely curious about the other person. Don't look at it as an opportunity to tell them about how amazing you are. Try to learn something about them. And I think you'll enjoy the lunch a lot more and they'll enjoy your company a lot more.
Some very very key points over here. I'm being part of different networking events, and I've been a culprit of that myself. I walk into a room and I try to talk about what I know, how good I am, and that's what I learned over the years. That's exactly not how it works. It should be the opposite. You should be listening more because the other person is there to speak as well. And by listening more, you actually have an opportunity to respond in a better way because you know what the other party is expecting. You know what they have to say. What is their thought process. So when you start talking, you make much more sense rather than just trying to talk yourself out of it and other person not even bothered listening to you. So I think that's a very strong, very very relevant tip, and I think we all should look into it every time we are meeting someone. Try to listen more and try to understand them more as a human being first. That's very important. Two shout outs I have to make over here very quickly. First of all, for my friend Ray Ramsey, who actually connected me with Nick last year in 2023. Thank you very much, Ray. If you're watching it, uh, thank you very much, my friend. And secondly, Nick, your work has been amazing. You have been helping me in some of the professional side of things in the recent past, and your work has been really amazing as a professional writer. So thank you so very much for that, and I really appreciate that. And I can vouch for your works. If anyone is considering any professional writers of any sort, come to Nick, have a chat with him. He definitely has the network and the skill set to deliver. So those were the two shout outs from my side, Nick. But I wanted to ask you if someone wants to connect with you or get in touch with you, either to have a lunch or just to have a networking tip or just to know more about you. What's the easiest way of doing that?
The easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn and send a message.
Amazing. Thank you so very much for that, my friend. Would you like to add anything before we round it off?
Oh, the only thing I would add is I hope people get out there and start networking. It can really change your life.
It definitely can, and it has changed my life for sure. Thank you so very much, Nick, for not being a stranger anymore. We will have another lunch very soon, not as strangers, but as good friends. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for your amazing networking tips.
Thanks, Adeel. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.